The restaurant had the kind of charm that came with years of refinement and an air of exclusivity. Nestled in the heart of a bustling city, it catered to a clientele that appreciated sophistication and good taste. The decor was warm yet modern, with soft lighting casting a glow over polished wood floors and sleek furniture. For most patrons, dining there was an experience worth savoring. For Melanie Carter, however, it was just another long night at work. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Melanie had been a waitress at the hardwood table for about 6 months, and though the job paid the bills, it wasn't her passion. She had big dreams of becoming an artist, dreams that were currently shelved in favor of paying rent and keeping the lights on. She liked the work well enough, but her no-nonsense attitude often rubbed her coworkers the wrong way. Melanie wasn't one to mince words, and her candid nature sometimes spilled over into interactions with customers. She wasn't rude, per se, just blunt. But that bluntness was about to get her into more trouble than she could have anticipated. It was a Tuesday evening, typically slower than the weekends, but steady enough to keep the staff on their toes. Melanie had just finished serving a large table of tech executives who'd left behind a meager tip despite their over-the-top demands. Frustration simmered beneath her calm exterior as she tidied up the table, her sharp eyes scanning the room for her next task. That's when she noticed a man seated alone in the corner. He was dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. At first glance, he didn't appear to be anyone special, just another diner enjoying a quiet meal. Melanie sighed, grabbing a menu and heading to his table. "Evening," she said briskly, placing the menu in front of him. "Water to start?" The man looked up and smiled, his face partially obscured by the brim of his cap. "Sure, water's fine." His voice was warm, easygoing, but Melanie barely registered it. She was already moving on autopilot, jotting down a note on her pad. When she returned with the water, he was still studying the menu, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. "You ready to order, or do you need a few more minutes?" she asked, her tone professional but devoid of warmth. "I think I'll start with the shrimp cocktail," he said, glancing up at her. "And maybe the steak for the main course, medium rare." "Got it," Melanie replied, turning to walk away. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was something familiar about him. He seemed comfortable, like he belonged there in a way that most diners didn't. But Melanie was too busy to dwell on it. There were other tables to attend to, and her shift wouldn't end itself. As the evening progressed, the man remained in his corner, quietly enjoying his meal and occasionally glancing around the restaurant. Melanie noticed him watching the staff, his gaze thoughtful. She found it odd but didn't think much of it. After all, it wasn't her job to psychoanalyze the customers. When it was time to clear his plates, Melanie returned to his table with her usual efficiency. "How was everything?" she asked, gathering the dishes. "Delicious," he said, his smile widening. "You've got a great team here." Melanie snorted. "Yeah, tell that to the chef. He's the one who gets all the credit." The man chuckled, and for the first time, Melanie felt a flicker of curiosity. There was an ease about him that felt almost rehearsed. But she brushed it off, chalking it up to the quirks of city life. As she turned to leave, he said something that made her pause. "Do you enjoy working here?" Melanie stopped in her tracks, blinking in surprise. It wasn't a question she often got from customers. Most of them didn't care about the staff's personal feelings. They just wanted their food and drinks delivered promptly. "It's a job," she replied, her tone guarded. "Pays the bills." He tilted his head, studying her. "Fair enough. But if you had the chance to make it better, what would you change?" The question caught her off guard, and for a moment Melanie hesitated. "I'd start with the customers," she said dryly, not bothering to filter her words. "Some of them act like they own the place." The man laughed, a rich, genuine sound that startled her. "I guess that's fair. But what if someone actually did own the place?" Melanie rolled her eyes. "Then they should probably stay out of the way and let us do our jobs." She walked away before he could respond, shaking her head at the odd exchange. The rest of the night passed in a blur of orders, dishes, and the occasional irate customer. By the time Melanie's shift ended, she was ready to collapse. She barely gave the man in the corner another thought as she clocked out and headed home. The next day, the restaurant was buzzing with excitement. Melanie arrived to find her co-workers whispering in hushed tones, their faces alight with gossip. "What's going on?" she asked, setting down her bag. "Did you hear?" one of them whispered. Steph Curry was here last night. Melanie frowned, confused. Steph Curry? Like the basketball player? Her coworker nodded eagerly. Yeah, he's the new owner of the restaurant. Apparently he bought it a few months ago but kept it quiet. Melanie's stomach dropped. The man in the corner, the casual clothes, the thoughtful gaze, it all clicked into place. Oh no, she muttered, her face flushing with embarrassment. Her coworker raised an eyebrow. What? I think I might have insulted him. The story spilled out before she could stop herself. She recounted the interaction, cringing as she remembered her sarcastic remarks and dismissive tone. Her coworkers stared at her in disbelief, and then, to her surprise, they burst out laughing. Only you, Melanie, one of them said, wiping away tears. Only you would tell Steph Curry to stay out of the way. Melanie groaned, burying her face in her hands. This is bad. What if he fires me? But her fears were unfounded. When Steph returned to the restaurant later that week, he greeted Melanie with the same warm smile he'd worn that first night. She braced herself for a reprimand, but instead, he pulled her aside for a conversation. I've been thinking about what you said, he began, his tone serious but kind. About the customers and the staff dynamic. You were right. Melanie blinked, caught off guard. I was? Steph nodded. This place is only as good as the people who run it. I want to make sure everyone here feels valued and heard. So I'd like your input on how we can improve things. The conversation marked the beginning of an unlikely friendship. Over the weeks that followed, Melanie found herself working more closely with Steph, offering honest feedback and brainstorming ideas for the restaurant. Her candor, which had once been a liability, became an asset. And as she got to know him better, she realized that beneath the fame and fortune, he was just a regular guy who cared deeply about the people around him. The experience taught Melanie a valuable lesson about assumptions and the power of humility. She never would have guessed that her bluntness could lead to such an unexpected opportunity, but life had a funny way of surprising her. And as she watched the restaurant thrive under Steph's ownership, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in being part of something bigger than herself. Melanie's journey at the hardwood table continued with a newfound sense of purpose. The revelation that Steph Curry not only owned the restaurant but had taken an interest in her opinions altered her perspective. Yet it was far from smooth sailing. For every moment of growth there were challenges, and for every opportunity there were doubts. Steph's return to the restaurant wasn't just a one-time gesture. He became a frequent presence, sometimes sitting in his corner observing the staff, other times rolling up his sleeves to help with operations. At first, Melanie found his visits unnerving. She was constantly on edge, worried she might say something else to land herself in hot water. But Steph's demeanor remained unshakably kind, and his genuine interest in the inner workings of the restaurant began to put her at ease. The changes he implemented came gradually, starting with the staff meetings. Before, they had been brief and perfunctory, a list of directives handed down by the manager. Now they were collaborative discussions. Steph would sit with the team, asking for their insights and actively listening to their concerns. Melanie, initially reluctant to speak up, found herself becoming one of the most vocal contributors. One day, during a particularly lively meeting, Steph brought up the topic of customer feedback. Melanie, he said, leaning forward in his chair, you've been here long enough to know the kind of clientele we get. If you could change one thing about how we handle customer complaints, what would it be? Melanie hesitated, glancing around at her coworkers. They were watching her, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled skepticism. She took a deep breath. I think we focus too much on appeasing people who are just looking for something to complain about, she said. It's like we're afraid to stand up for ourselves. I get that the customer is supposed to be king, but sometimes it feels like we're being treated like servants instead of professionals. Steph nodded thoughtfully. So you're saying we need to strike a balance? Be accommodating but not at the expense of our team's dignity? Exactly, Melanie replied, her confidence growing. If we show that we respect ourselves and our work, the right customers will respect us too. Her words sparked a discussion that lasted nearly an hour, and by the end of it, Steph had outlined a plan to empower the staff while maintaining high standards of service. Melanie left the meeting feeling a strange mix of pride and disbelief. It wasn't every day that someone like Steph Curry not only asked for her opinion, but acted on it. Over the following weeks, the changes became evident. Staff training sessions emphasized communication skills and conflict resolution, giving employees the tools to handle difficult situations without feeling belittled. The menu was streamlined to include a section that highlighted the restaurant's commitment to quality, with a note explaining that substitutions would be limited to preserve the integrity of the dishes. The move was bold, and some customers bristled at first, but overall the response was positive. As the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted, so did Melanie's role. Steph began relying on her for more than just feedback. He asked her to help mentor new hires, sharing her candid insights and teaching them the ropes. Though she still struggled with her brusque nature, Melanie found that her honesty, when tempered with patience, was appreciated. The new hires looked up to her, and she discovered a surprising talent for leadership. One of the most memorable moments came on a Friday evening when the restaurant was packed. A high-profile guest, a film director known for his fiery temper, arrived without a reservation, demanding to be seated immediately. The hostess, flustered and overwhelmed, looked to Melanie for help. Melanie approached the man with her usual straightforwardness. "Good evening, sir. I understand you're eager to dine with us, but unfortunately, we're fully booked tonight. I'd be happy to add you to our wait list, or I can recommend another excellent spot nearby." The director's face darkened. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "I do," Melanie replied, keeping her voice calm. "And I respect your work, but we hold ourselves to a standard here, and that includes treating all our guests fairly. If you're willing to wait, I promise we'll make it worth your while." The man stared at her, clearly unaccustomed to being denied. For a moment, Melanie thought he might storm out, but then his expression softened. "Fine," he said gruffly. "Put me on the list." When Steph heard about the incident later, he gave Melanie a rare grin. "You've got guts," he said. "That's what I like about you." As time went on, Melanie's relationship with Steph deepened. She learned more about his vision for the restaurant and the reasons behind his investment. It wasn't just a business venture for him, it was a passion project, a way to connect with the community and create something lasting. He talked about his own journey, the challenges he'd faced as an athlete, and the lessons he'd learned about perseverance and teamwork. Their conversations often veered into personal territory. Steph encouraged Melanie to pursue her art, even suggesting that she display some of her work in the restaurant. Melanie hesitated, her insecurities bubbling to the surface. "What if people don't like it?" she asked one evening as they sat in the empty dining room after hours. Steph shrugged. "Not everyone will. But that's not the point. The point is to put yourself out there. You've got talent, Melanie. Don't let fear hold you back." His words stayed with her, and over the next few weeks she began to sketch again during her free time. Slowly but surely, she started to believe in her abilities, inspired by Steph's unwavering faith in her potential. The turning point came when Steph announced a charity event to benefit local youth programs. The restaurant would host a gala dinner, and he wanted Melanie to help plan it. The idea thrilled and terrified her in equal measure, but she threw herself into the task with determination. She worked tirelessly, coordinating with vendors, designing the menu, and even creating hand-drawn invitations. The night of the gala was a resounding success. The restaurant was transformed into an elegant haven, with twinkling lights and live music creating an atmosphere of warmth and celebration. Guests marveled at the attention to detail, and Melanie's artwork, displayed in the entryway, received numerous compliments. As the evening drew to a close, Steph pulled Melanie aside. "You've outdone yourself," he said, his eyes shining with pride. "This wouldn't have been possible without you." For the first time, Melanie allowed herself to bask in the recognition. She had worked hard, and the results spoke for themselves. In that moment, she realized how far she had come. From a disillusioned waitress going through the motions to a confident leader making a real impact. But Melanie's story didn't end there. The success of the gala opened doors she hadn't even dared to dream of. Steph encouraged her to take on more responsibilities, and soon she found herself overseeing the restaurant's marketing and events. She thrived in the role, her creativity and organizational skills shining through. She also began to take her art more seriously, setting up a small studio in her apartment and dedicating time each week to painting. Her co-workers, once skeptical of her blunt demeanor, became her biggest supporters, often stopping by her studio to offer encouragement. One day, Steph surprised her with an announcement. "We're opening a second location," he said, a twinkle in his eye, "and I want you to be part of the leadership team." Melanie's jaw dropped. "You're serious?" "Of course," he said. "You've proven yourself, Melanie. You've got the vision, the drive, and the heart. I can't think of anyone better for the job." The offer was a dream come true, but it also came with a weight of responsibility. Melanie wrestled with self-doubt, wondering if she was truly ready for such a big step, but Steph's unwavering confidence in her abilities gave her the courage to take the leap. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Melanie poured her energy into helping launch the new location, drawing on everything she had learned during her time at the hardwood table. The experience was both exhilarating and exhausting, but she relished the challenge. On opening night, as she stood in the middle of the bustling dining room, watching the staff work seamlessly together, Melanie felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had come a long way from the sarcastic waitress who had once dismissed a mysterious diner in a hoodie. She had grown into a leader, an artist, and a person she could truly be proud of. As she glanced across the room, her eyes met Steph's. He raised his glass in a silent toast, his expression filled with pride and gratitude. Melanie smiled, raising her own glass in return. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face them. The restaurant wasn't just a place of work anymore. It was a symbol of transformation, a testament to the power of second chances and the unexpected ways life could change. And as Melanie looked around at the thriving business she had helped build, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the journey, for the people who had believed in her, and for the future that lay ahead. The months following the opening of the second location were some of the busiest and most transformative of Melanie's life. She threw herself into her new role with the kind of fervor she hadn't realized she was capable of, learning to balance her responsibilities as a leader with her ongoing artistic pursuits. Every day presented a fresh set of challenges and opportunities, and Melanie quickly discovered that managing a second restaurant was a whole different beast from the first. Unlike the hardwood table, which had a reputation and a loyal clientele, the new location was starting from scratch. Though the menu and ambiance were carefully curated to echo the original's charm, the team still had to build a name for itself in a new neighborhood. Melanie was at the forefront of these efforts, coordinating with the marketing team to create buzz and engaging with the community to establish connections. One of her first initiatives was to host a series of community nights where local artists, musicians, and small businesses were invited to showcase their talents and products at the restaurant. Melanie saw it as a chance to not only draw attention to the new location, but also to give back to the neighborhood in a meaningful way. These events quickly became a hit, drawing crowds and generating positive press for the restaurant. The first community night was particularly memorable. Melanie had recruited a local jazz trio to provide live music and invited a handful of artists to set up booths in the restaurant's courtyard. Among them was a painter named Clara, whose vibrant, abstract pieces immediately caught Melanie's eye. As the night went on, Melanie struck up a conversation with her, and they bonded over their shared passion for art. "You should do this more often," Clara said, gesturing to the bustling crowd. "It's rare to find a restaurant that really supports the arts like this." Melanie smiled. "That's the goal. We want to be more than just a place to eat. We want to be part of the community." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you're off to a great start. And if you ever want to collaborate on something, let me know." The idea stayed with Melanie long after the event ended. She began to envision ways to integrate art more deeply into the restaurant's identity, from rotating exhibits in the dining room to workshops and classes hosted in the space during off hours. Steph, ever supportive of her ideas, gave her the green light to pursue these projects, and soon the restaurant became known as a hub for creativity and culture. Despite the successes, there were plenty of hurdles along the way. The new staff, while enthusiastic, lacked the experience and cohesion of the original team. Melanie spent countless hours training them, mediating conflicts, and finding ways to build morale. She quickly realized that leadership wasn't just about making decisions, it was about inspiring trust and fostering a sense of unity. One particularly tough moment came when a miscommunication in the kitchen led to a series of botched orders during a busy Saturday night. Tempers flared, and Melanie found herself in the middle of a heated argument between the head chef and one of the line cooks. She took a deep breath, stepping between them. "Enough," she said firmly. "I know this is frustrating, but yelling at each other isn't going to solve anything. Let's take a step back and figure out what went wrong so we can fix it." Her calm but authoritative tone had the desired effect. The tension eased, and together they worked through the issue, ensuring the rest of the night went smoothly. Later, the head chef approached her privately. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I let my frustration get the better of me. You handled that a lot better than I did." Melanie waved him off. "We're all human. The important thing is that we learn from it and move forward." Moments like these reminded Melanie of how much she had grown. A year ago, she might have been just as likely to lose her temper in a similar situation. But her experiences with Steph and the trust he had placed in her had taught her the value of patience, empathy, and perspective. As the months turned into a year, the new location began to thrive. The community nights became a staple, and the restaurant earned rave reviews for its food, atmosphere, and commitment to local culture. Melanie's reputation as a leader and innovator grew, and she found herself fielding invitations to speak at industry events and participate in panels. One such event was a hospitality conference focused on innovation and community engagement. Melanie was initially hesitant to accept, nervous about speaking in front of an audience of her peers, but Steph encouraged her, reminding her of how far she had come. "You've got something valuable to share," he said. "Don't sell yourself short." The conference turned out to be a turning point for Melanie. Standing on the stage, sharing her journey and the lessons she had learned, she felt a sense of confidence and clarity she hadn't experienced before. The audience responded enthusiastically, and several attendees approached her afterward to thank her for her insights. One of them was a restaurant owner named Javier, who was struggling to revitalize his family business. "Your story really resonated with me," he said. "I've been trying to figure out how to connect with our community better, but I didn't know where to start." Melanie offered to meet with him to share more detailed advice, and the two struck up a friendship. Over time, Melanie found herself becoming an informal mentor to Javier, drawing on her own experiences to help him navigate the challenges of the industry. The relationship was deeply fulfilling, and it gave her a sense of purpose beyond her own ambitions. Meanwhile, Melanie's personal life began to flourish as well. Her art, once a private escape, was now a central part of her identity. She started hosting small gallery shows in the restaurant, and to her surprise, several of her pieces sold. The validation bolstered her confidence, and she began to dream of one day opening her own studio. Steph continued to be a guiding presence in her life, though their relationship evolved as Melanie grew into her own. He remained a mentor and friend, but he also treated her as an equal, trusting her to make decisions and lead initiatives. Their partnership was built on mutual respect, and it became a cornerstone of the restaurant's success. One evening, after a particularly busy day, Steph and Melanie found themselves sitting together in the empty dining room, reflecting on everything they had accomplished. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Steph asked, swirling a glass of wine. "From that first night when you told me to stay out of the way?" Melanie laughed, the memory no longer a source of embarrassment, but a reminder of how much had changed. "It feels like a lifetime ago." "It's been incredible to watch you grow," Steph said, his tone sincere. "You've not only made this place better, you've made me better. Your honesty, your passion, your creativity, it's contagious." Melanie felt a lump rise in her throat. "You took a chance on me when you didn't have to. I'll never forget that." Steph smiled. "Sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places. You taught me that." Their conversation left Melanie feeling a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunities she had been given, but for the person she had become. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. As the restaurant continued to thrive, Melanie began to think more seriously about her future. She loved her work, but she also knew that her true passion lay in her art. With Steph's encouragement, she started laying the groundwork for her next big adventure, opening a gallery that would double as a community space, much like the restaurant had become. The decision wasn't easy. Leaving the restaurant, which had become like a second home, felt bittersweet, but Melanie knew that her time there had prepared her for this moment. She had learned to lead, to take risks, and to trust in her own abilities, and she knew that the lessons she had learned would carry her forward, no matter where her path led. On her last day at the restaurant, the staff threw her a surprise farewell party. There were speeches, laughter, and plenty of tears, but more than anything, there was an overwhelming sense of love and camaraderie. Steph presented her with a custom plaque that read, "To Melanie, the heart of the hardwood table, thank you for everything." As she looked around at the faces of her friends and colleagues, Melanie felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had left her mark on the restaurant, just as it had left its mark on her. And though she was moving on to a new chapter, she knew that the memories and relationships she had built would stay with her forever. The next morning, Melanie stood in her new gallery, sunlight streaming through the windows as she hung one of her paintings on the wall. It was a bold, vibrant piece, full of energy and life. As she stepped back to admire it, she felt a surge of pride. This was her dream, finally realized. And it all started with a chance encounter, a bit of honesty, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. The opening day of Melanie's gallery felt like the culmination of everything she had worked toward. A moment so surreal she had to remind herself it was real. The space was an embodiment of her vision. High ceilings adorned with exposed beams, walls painted a crisp white to let the art shine, and a warm, welcoming ambiance that invited people to linger and explore. It was more than just a gallery. It was a creative haven. The exhibit featured not only Melanie's work, but also pieces by Clara and other local artists she had met during her time at the hardwood table. Each piece told a story, and together, they created a tapestry of the community's vibrant and diverse spirit. Melanie felt a surge of pride as she watched people wander through the space, pausing to admire the artwork and chatting animatedly about their impressions. The energy in the room was electric, a blend of curiosity, admiration, and inspiration. Among the crowd, familiar faces began to appear. Steph arrived with his family, beaming as he made his way to Melanie. "This place is incredible," he said, his voice brimming with admiration. "You've really outdone yourself." "Thank you," Melanie replied, her voice tinged with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without everything I learned from you." Steph shook his head. "This is all you. Your passion, your determination. This is your dream come to life." Their conversation was interrupted by Clara, who waved enthusiastically before pulling Melanie into a hug. "The gallery's perfect," Clara gushed, "and the turnout is amazing. You've created something truly special here." Melanie smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It's not just me. It's everyone who believed in this vision and helped make it happen." As the evening progressed, Melanie found herself in a whirlwind of conversations, each one a reminder of how far she had come. People congratulated her on the gallery's success, shared their thoughts on the artwork, and expressed excitement about future exhibits and events. Among them was Javier, the restaurant owner she had mentored, who had traveled from out of town to support her. "You're an inspiration," Javier said, raising a glass in her honor. "Seeing you chase your dreams has motivated me to do the same." Melanie felt a lump rise in her throat. "That means so much to me," she said. "But don't forget, you've inspired me too. Watching you turn your restaurant around was a reminder of what's possible when you put your heart into something." As the night wound down and the last guests began to trickle out, Melanie took a moment to stand in the center of the gallery, letting the silence envelop her. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the challenges, the triumphs, and the unexpected twists that had shaped her path. Every decision, every risk, and every moment of growth had led to this. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us. What are your thoughts on the waitress insulting Steph Curry? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.